Hello. In a previous video, we looked at the process for inputting the clinical details and activating a patient record which had been created by the interface with the patient administration system. In this video, we're going to see how to create a patient record from scratch, should you need to do that. We start by going to the patient option on the main menu. And down at the bottom there's a new button which will allow us to add a new patient. But before I press that, what is really good practice, and which I urge you to always do, is to search for the patient in Dawn first. So I'm going to search for Catherine test patient, and it's telling me there are no records found that match your criteria. That means I'm safe to go ahead and add the patient. The reason for searching for them is to make sure they don't already exist, because the last thing we want to do is create a duplicate. But now that I know the patient isn't in Dawn, I can press the new button down here. It actually remembers what I typed into the search, so I'm not wasting time by doing that. And now I can start to complete the rest of the information. So I put in her name, her title, sex and date of birth, and then I need to put in the hospital number and the NHS number if I have it, or if you're not part of the NHS, if you have a national number that you use in Dawn, this is where you can put that. Name and address goes here, and the postcode. Any notes about the patient go there, but you're more likely to be filling those in later. You might already know something that needs to be, that people dealing with this record always need to be aware of those. So you could say, I don't know, hard of hearing, that kind of thing, you know, general information that's always going to be relevant. If we're recording ethnic origin or primary language, you can do so here. These are drop-down lists. Home phone number, we can put in there. Mobile if we have it. Work fax, email address. And then the primary messaging method. This is how we will communicate with the patient primarily. So it might be that their preference is for SMS messages, or it might be it's for emails with PDF attachments. It could be a phone preference. If you do allow that, if you do phone patients if they prefer it. But with Dawn messages, you can set up some messages to say they have to go by a written method. So if you do choose phone as the primary preference, you also have to pick one of these that says what the written preference is in brackets, so that if we have a message that must go by a written method, we know which way to do it. I'm just going to put email PDF for now. Risk class will default to whatever you have set as a system setting. If I want them to start as watchful wait just while they get going, I can change that there, or I could even have that as my system default. Now that's the patient demographics dealt with. When I go to the next step, we're starting to do the things that we were doing previously with the record that had been created by the interface. But actually I don't have to save the record and do them through the treatment plan form. I can do them as part of this same wizard here. So here I can choose the therapy template and the first phase. Those are the mandatory fields, but I probably also want to record a diagnosis. So that might be, let's search the list. There we go, rheumatoid arthritis. Start date is here. I can change that if I wish. Again, if you're using a reference ranges override the default test limits for the normal ranges should you need to for a particular cohort of patients, perhaps female patients or patients on a particular therapy where you want to flag them using slightly different ranges. I don't have any set up, so I'm not selecting a reference range, but that's where you would do it. Again, I'm not using clinics, but if you are dividing your patients into different clinics, perhaps for clinical reasons, early arthritis or spondylitis patients or whatever, or whether for maybe monitoring arrangements, if you're handing these patients over to the GP who's going to monitor them on a kind of shared care agreement, you might use a clinic to identify them. But if you don't need to divide your patients into clinics, you don't have to select a clinic. Next visit date, this will actually, if I fill it in here, it will create the first visit for me. So I'm going to do that because that will save time later. And down here we have the referral tab where I can select who the GP is and who the consultant is. If I know the patient's next of kin details, I can come onto this tab and fill those. You can also fill in additional details, additional risks or diagnoses if you wish. And again, we can, if we want to, put in extra phone numbers or email addresses if relevant. That's not often filled in, not often needed, and certainly not used by the primary messaging mechanisms in Dawn. Those are for reference only. So usually it will be the first two tabs that you fill in and possibly the next of kin if you have the details. Once you've done that, you can press finish. And Dawn is now going to create that record, set up that treatment plan, activate it, because under initial status here we said set it to active. I can choose to decide later, in which case if I'd done that it would be new in the same way as it is when the interface puts it in. But because I chose active, it's gone in, it's already activated, it's already created the first visit for me, so I have the set of tests waiting for results with the date of the 22nd of the 11th, which is today. The only thing I have left to do is to add the drugs, which I can do from the drugs tab. And I can search for the drug, correct the start date if it's not today, and put in the dose and the frequency. That's the drug added, it's showing there. We have the next visit. We have the drugs. We have the GP and consultant, and the treatment plan is active. So that's how to add a patient manually should you need to.